Directors Organizational Meeting for Monday, June 8th, here at the City Council Chambers. I'd like to point out that in the back is posted a copy of the Open Meetings Law. Any questions or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, they're approved. Adjustments to the agenda, Sony.
I would like to call on the consent agenda items 1A through 1D together for vote. They were all introduced by Washington, and the remaining items on the agenda will be introduced by Bowers. And then for items 4, public hearing liquor resolutions, I will call items 4A and 4B together. Item 6, I will call 6A and 6B together. Item 6C and 6D together. Items 6F and 6H, I will call those items together.
6F and 6H?
Yep, 6F through 6H, excuse me. Yes.
Angie.
And then I believe there was a request for item 6K. I think our city attorney will come up and talk about that item.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a motion to amend on item 7D. And that's all I have on the agenda.
7D is the job?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's the one with the streamlining.
That's the SDO.
Roy, you want me to motion that, or do you want to motion?
I'll motion the amendment.
Tammy
You
did the original
Yeah.
Okay.
amendment.
Tammy did the original
Motion.
Motion, so, and he'll do the amendment.
amendment. All right,
Okay.
I'll second. So-
Any,
On the agenda, you said 1A through D, or 1A through H?
Delta.
1A through 1D.
D, thank you.
Yes.
and then E,
And then items 1E through 1M will be introduced by Bowers.
They're called separately.
We can call all those together.
Thank you.
any other questions?
Can we give a warning order now for the directors we want to talk to?
Yes. Do you have any
I
directors?
would like to speak to our public health director and our library director together, if they're available.
Okay. Would you like to speak with anybody?
I'd like to speak with Law.
With law?
Yeah.
The Jeff.
Yeah.
And if Lynn Johnson was in the building, I'd like to speak with him.
Me too.
But if he's not, that's fine.
Then he should call us.
Pardon me?
Then he should call us.
Yeah. But, yeah, Parks and Rec. Anybody else? Okay, hopefully they're watching and will show up at 2:30 for us to speak with them. Okay, other items on here. We have the mayor's office. If we would have Jennifer, I believe, is here.
Yay. Bye.
Good afternoon.
Hey.
I just wanted to lift up, a couple of items. If you didn't have a chance to see the mayor and Chief Kleinmeister on Friday afternoon, the mayor announced several steps that our office will be taking in light of the protests that occurred over the last couple of weeks. So the mayor did outline these steps on Friday, including re-examining the ordinances that govern the Citizen Police Advisory Board, partnering with people across the community to create listening sessions, I think the first of which is scheduled for this week, convening the Multicultural Advisory Committee to extend outreach and the impact of those conversations, and that, I believe, is also scheduled for tomorrow. And then I believe the mayor and Councilwoman Washington and the chief have a listening session via Zoom that's going to be coordinated for this Friday. I don't have the details on that yet, but I think they'll be forthcoming, and we'll get those details to all of you. With regard to COVID-19 and our administration, we recently last week issued a mandatory face covering policy for all of our employees. We did provide some ability for departments in terms of service where they need to adjust that policy, probably notably with fire or police where they're trying to communicate with people and it's easier to do without a mask, but they have specific policies in place around that. Anyway, so that went into effect this week, and we are also taking steps to continue to open up our service to the community and have been installing engineering controls throughout the building. So you may notice at the law department's counter, the mayor's office counter, and others, we have some temporary plexiglass guards in place, and some of those will be made more permanent, and so we're making efforts to make sure that those get in place and that we will then be able to open up beyond appointments for the public. I wanted to touch on the budget really quickly. The mayor is scheduled to make her presentation on the recommended budget to you next Monday. I assume I need to be in touch with the chair about how that goes, whether you do that at the beginning of your 3 o'clock meeting or you do it separately from there, but she does plan to come and do a presentation.
Usually that's been done in the form of a pre-council.
Okay, we can work out whatever time works for you.
Well, we've got a schedule that's been posted and we sent out to everybody, and we'll discuss that here at our meeting if we feel like that schedule is what we want to follow.
So one was just establishing the time for the mayor's presentation to the council, and then firming up the department schedule. Is that what you'll talk about later? The finance department was just looking for some feedback on how you wanted that to get put together. So just wanted to make sure we got that to our directors so they know which days they're required to be here for their hearings. And then finally, just wanted to touch on item 6K, I think, that Sonny talked about, which is regard to establishing the aging department. I think the city attorney will address this during your meeting, but our director of Aging Partners, Randy Jones, is out of town today, so we're hoping that that public hearing can be continued till next week so that he can be here to answer any questions.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
Any questions for Ms. Brinkman?
Okay.
Okay, I'll let you know about our budget hearings and stuff. We'll discuss it some more today.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, the other items that we've had correspondence, of course, from the, if we could have our health department. Interim director of the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department, Pat Lopez. Come on down.
Good afternoon. I just thought I'd give you a little briefing about where we're at right now. We have a total of 1,356 cases in Lancaster County, and our total number of cases for June so far is 145. We have 267 individuals who've recovered. And like in Douglas County, 70% of our cases are in the racial or ethnic minority population. And 30% of those are Hispanic, 29% Asian, and 7.6% African American, Black. 75% of our cases are in the 20 to 59 age group. We're working with Councilman Show on doing more testing, and the community, and we'll follow through on that as appropriate with his guidance. We've had 10 deaths in Lancaster County. Our positivity rate for cases reported last week, and our week ends on Saturday, was 5.9%, and that was a drop from our peak of 14.1% in the second week of May. So the overall positivity rate in Lancaster County is 7.4% right now. And we've tested approximately 5.6% of our population. And that we mapped that of all the individuals tested and where they are. And it's been uniform throughout our community now. So in most of the census tracts, the test rate has been 3 to 5%. So that makes me really happy to know that we don't have just one area of our community that's seeking testing. However, we can do better, and we will do better. We want to get more tests out there. We've also identified some geographic clusters using a hotspot analysis, and our EPI team is working on identifying geographic links to these clusters, such as the meat processing plants. We still have 34 nurses who are engaged in contact tracing. We're able to reach out to everyone who's positive that we receive a report on within 24 hours. And once they're identified positive, our nurses help them with needed resources in the community. They provide education and other kinds of information that people need. We're working with our cultural centers to not only provide some quarantine kits for families that are quarantined and isolated, but one of the things that we do know is a huge issue for families to be able to even get tested and then stay isolated or quarantined is if they are not being paid and they are worried about paying their rent and buying food and taking care of their children. So we've been working really hard to provide those solutions. Not all families are asking for that, but because it's really difficult for them to have to ask, they're used to being really self-sufficient, but this is a very different time for all of them. We've done another testing at the cultural center. I think I mentioned that last week, and we're working now for another location in the community also. We're hoping to be able to use Test Nebraska for that, so I'll keep you posted on that. You probably heard we changed the dial a little bit. We moved it to the higher yellow, and that's based on our level of cases being more flat, our positivity rate decreasing, our access to contact tracing, and our health system is very healthy and able to respond. Our EPI team is working on developing a risk analysis matrix, so we'll be sharing information with you. We plan to add some more areas on the dashboard for more information out into the community. As far as the businesses, we put in the form for them a fillable form for events. And I actually had an opportunity to go down to the Pinnacle Arena and look at what they're doing. That's pretty remarkable. In every area, our community is just doing such fabulous work to make sure people can be healthy, but so that we can grow our economy and they can be safe as employers and employees, and the public can be safe. So we've had over 1,200 calls from our local businesses in working with them and following through on the directed health measure and how they can meet that and have an event. I thought you might like to hear this. It was just a number I asked for, but personal protective equipment. We've distributed over 420,000 pieces in Lancaster County. And so that's, our primary areas have been the hospital systems, our long-term care, and then our first responders. So we're still using volunteers. Duncan Aviation is doing a huge job of making face coverings. We're still doing some of the sewing on the tie-back gowns for first responders. And our work with the cultural centers, they're providing interpretation and translation of materials, as I said, and also going out and working in the community. And also, we identified last week that we need to do some additional work with some of our elders in those communities. So we've been able to do that. We've been working with Lincoln Public Schools on their reopening, and we'll have another meeting this afternoon. We're excited about that, and we'll be meeting with all the school administrators again this week. And long-term care centers. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare wants long-term care centers in order to reshape how they're putting measures in place and maybe allow more congregate eating and families to visit. one of the requirements Centers for Medicaid and Medicare has is that everyone, all staff and all residents in a facility have to be tested. So we're working with the state and trying to do that, and there's multiple agencies at the state level that are involved in this. So the coordination of all has been a little challenging. And the Guard's going to be moving from the event center. As I understand it, the event center is doing some remodeling starting next week, so the Guard won't be able to be there. So we're looking at another location to move Test Nebraska to, but actually we're going to move St. E's there as well, because when school starts in the fall, we'll lose North Star. So that's ongoing, so I'll be able to report to you next week where that is. And we moved our temporary shelter for the men that was at Kinetic because they're opening for business, which is great. Thanks to Councilman McGinnis assisted us, and we have a great location at the Red Cross building, and Pastor Tom is very happy. So, yeah. And they have showers, they have restroom. And actually, it's a really nice layout for the work we want to do, and we have additional space there should we need it for, we can use a different level should we need something for isolation or quarantine at some point. And that's, I try to hit the high points.
Any questions? Yes, Benny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Director. You touched briefly upon the dial, and I'm excited about that. And it moved from extreme to moderate. Still a risk,
Yes.
but less risk, right?
Right. So we want to still keep in place all the things we're doing. We know that's working well. In one of our other countries, they've had a decrease, even though they've had children in school so much and close together, their influenza rate has been down because they've been doing social distancing. So I think we know that this is helping in our community, especially because of the spread. But one of the things we keep working on is getting our testing results in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Yes. Sandra?
What, are you tracking, are you planning to track how the rollout of sports activities are affecting our rates?
Yes.
And is there anything that you're asking specifically of sports teams as they start to play teams from other communities?
Well, they all have the same guidance in place that they have to follow. It's the same across. You know, we're trying to monitor. And in general, people in Lincoln tend to let us know if the recommendations aren't being followed. But the other way we'll know is if we have an increase in cases, and we'll know what activities have been done. And with Test Nebraska, we did talk with them, and we opened the age range from 15 to 35, just because we thought some of the people who've been at mass gatherings may want to get tested, and we didn't want that to be a barrier for them to be able to access that. So we didn't have a lot of registrations, so they called me on Saturday and asked if we could just open it up in general, and I said as long as the people who need to get tested can get tested, I didn't see a problem with that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Pat, so much.
Thank you very much.
Quit scribbling on my note. Okay, going forward, we've had correspondence from the planning department, Lincoln Transportation Utilities on their Complete Streets Annual Report, boards and commissions, RTSD.
Yeah, we met last week. We got a report of the statement of financial activity. We got a report regarding the current budget status and a draft CIP for 2021. We looked at some contract with some legal with the person who's represented the RTSD before. and got a project update about 33rd and Cornhusker and Deadman's Run. There's a public meeting that was scheduled for June 11th, but was canceled due to the health directives. So they're going to be doing some postcards and emails, and the draft environmental document should be completed by the spring of 2021 with a formal public hearing to follow. And Councilman Christensen, if there's anything I forgot?
I would say we elected Rick Vest chair and James Michael Bowers vice chair of the RTSD. Also, we made the formal request of the county board for the levy, which I think in all realistic expectations will be reduced because of reduced revenues to the county. So this is a big concern for us because it will directly impact the 33rd and Cornhusker project, which is the only major project on our horizon right now. So it could end up pushing that project back a year, 2 years, or more, depending on how long it takes the county board to restore full funding under the levy for that. Also, we did pass the 1% increase in levy spending authority. This is not an increase in the levy, but it's the amount of money that could be spent if we chose to as a percentage of what comes in to the RTSD. And as just a reminder to everybody who might be interested in the Railroad Transportation Safety District, it is, in my understanding, the one and only political organization, governmental organization in the state of Nebraska that can only spend money that it has. It cannot spend money that it does not have, cannot borrow money, cannot bond, anything like it. So we can only spend it as it comes in.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, let's move on. We had many constituent correspondence over the last week, and we will probably have many more. Question for everybody on the discussion of the budget. I sent out that agenda item to you all earlier this week. And were there any questions, or what I got back, most everybody could try to attend them, try to be there for those times. Didn't see any reason to really have them changed. So if not, we'll keep them the same. I had a question on there. There was a group that was in yellow that Emergency Management, Weed Control, Human Services and Justice Council, Joint Budget, and Public Building Commission. Are these all county?
Those are all joint city-county
Okay.
things, and that's why they're on there.
So at this point, we're gonna leave that agenda as set for next week. I believe next week on Monday, we will get the mayor's budget, and we'll have a director's meeting starting at, or a pre-council, starting at 1:30, and have the mayor here to talk to us about her budget, upcoming budget.
So next Monday's scheduled, the pre-council, the budget's 1:30 to 2:30. Pre-council's 2:30 to 3, or the director's meeting is 2:30 to 3.
Yeah. We'll have our director's meeting from 2:30 to 3. Because we're gonna leave a full hour for the budget release. Okay, any other questions? I'll get with Finance Department and Sherry and get it all set up for us. Okay, couple of other things I wanted to bring up. The library board is gonna be filling a vacancy. And Roy or Benny, the process for that is the library board will take all the
That's
applications
correct.
and get them all, and then they will sort through them and give us recommendations.
Correct.
at
And then
a-
bring
at a
it to
meeting,
'em.
And we'll have that at a
Mhm.
director's meeting maybe.
And actually, we vote on that in a
We'll vote,
regular council meeting.
but then she'll come to us with
They'll come to us in a director's meeting.
give us all everybody that applied, and we'll
Correct.
have a chance to look at them all.
I think she usually has one suggestion and asks if we have any trouble with that.
Right.
And then that becomes the official recommendation of the board.
Okay, so I'll tell her, Pat, to move forward with that. There's one term, or one seat available.
Does-
Um,
Next Monday, or?
I don't think it'll be next Monday, and next Monday we have the mayor's
Right.
budget, so it'll probably be at least a few weeks, because she'll wanna get as many applications and open that up going forward. Let's see, we covered that. Events. I noticed that we have a lot of events that are kind of becoming spur of the moment events. And as we move forward, if we wanna all to attend, I'm asking you to send those events or times to Angie and to other council members. And if she posts them, I believe 24 hours in advance, that we will be attending a meeting. Jeff, could you come forward and just, if it's posted 24 hours in advance that we will be attending an event, more than 3 of us.
It's a quorum question.
Pardon me?
This is a quorum question,
It's a
right?
quorum question.
So the quorum question comes down to maybe a practice that the council has followed. From the standpoint of a Public Meetings Act a quorum violation, if you're not there meeting, if you're not 4 of you talking about an item, if you're just there, whether it's an event at the Lead Center or at a bar, to listen to a band, it's not a quorum issue. It's when you go there and then you say, oh, let's talk about this planning item that's coming up next week, and you get 4 people. So do you need to coordinate or work through Angie? Not from the standpoint of any sort of legal issue. But if the council has followed that practice, it's not necessarily a bad practice.
Can I comment on that too? And it's been common practice for the council members, when we are at an event where there's multiple members of the council, that we not congregate, because we want to avoid the appearance of a problem.
Okay. But if, also, like you said, past practices, if we're attending an event, if it's a Rotary luncheon or whatever, we're all attending, it's always good to have it as posted that we are attending.
That hasn't been past practice, has not.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand in the last week, pardon me, Councilman.
He's the legal guy, but it's my understanding if it's a meeting scheduled by us, then it has to be. But if we're attending someone else's meeting, as long as we don't work on city business there, there's no reason to avoid it.
yes, I think that's a good summary. Now, it may be the coordination is helpful. For example, if you want to make sure that you have a presence there, knowing that Councilman Christensen's going to go, you may decide not to because you know the council is going to be represented. So from the standpoint of coordination, it does make sense. And
Okay.
just kind of planning. But I don't see any legal implications.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I thought I'd bring that up. Okay. Anything else
Directors.
for the directors meeting?
Just, there's some directors back
Yeah,
there.
we have some directors waiting for us here at 2:30. Seeing none, Lou, I will adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
See you back at 3.
Break.
Go talk to your director.